You can see the bitterness and
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'm also, I know this probably doesn't align, but I'm still imagining him with two like gimped out ankles
yeah.
and all the anger, in a basement flat, stewing over this. It's painting quite a picture of a curmudgeon. Hey, everybody out there. Welcome back to another episode of the Audiophiles. It's Andy, it's John, and it is time to dine on some music. So, John, what are you offering up today as our entree?
So we've got a band which we visited once before called the Auteurs.
Okay, New French
Previously,
Girlfriend? Was that
New
the.
French Girlfriend.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So we've got another track by them, and this track is entitled "Everything You Say Will Destroy You."
Hey, words to live by. All right, well, let me go off, give this thing a spin, and come back and let you and everybody else out there know what I've made it.
Well, they sent back all the bodies who were looking really hopeless, and it didn't seem
That
that
bass.
callous till it stopped you in your flow.
These little like two note punctuations of that jangly kind of guitar chord progression hitting each time the chords change as it would naturally do. It just sounds nice and pleasant. Not a lot of pageantry to the beginning of this one. We just kind of like off to it. But it sounds gentle, even though I feel like if those guitars were turned up or more forward in the mix, it might have a little bit more grit to it because it feels like it's got that tone, but it's subdued enough that it kind of rounds it off a little bit. But it's super early days, so this could go anywhere from here. So let's press on.
She's surrounded by her wardens, and they're looking really nervous. All about the man from Rogers, hit another fire glow. Everything you say
Ooh, that
will
organ.
destroy you anyway. Everything you say will come haunt you round each corner. Everything you say will destroy you. When you may think that you're burned, lying on a mound of ashes, you are mentioned in the postscript of the statues anyway. And the major's really nervous when he's walking around the airport. You know your monster's got his mark. Your upstart judge is gonna smart everything
Oh, nice.
you say will destroy you anyway. Everything you
I liked how they brought that back in. It's like that thing that John and I talked about, that flam of the drum hit, the way it comes in, kind of grips your attention, and you're already kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop anyway because of that like very brief pregnant pause, and it all comes back in, and it's just kind of like fulfilling to hear that. Let's pull that back a little bit.
walking around the airport. You know your monster's got his mark. Your upstart judge is gonna smart everything you say will destroy you anyway. Everything you say will come haunt you round each corner.
pretty truncated ending. It feels like that could have at least, warranted another 20 or 30 seconds to kind of resolve it in a more succinct way that also doesn't feel like you're falling off the edge of a cliff or coming right up on the precipice of the end of a cliff. It's like, just stopped. Yeah, this was a decent song that had more going for it than it had going against it. It's something that I would write home about? No. Is it something that I would complain about? Not at all. There was some really interesting kind of this balance between grit and polish, which I know are antithetical, but yet they somehow marry that, particularly in how the guitar sounded. I think that maybe it's the production. They're a little bit lower in the mix, so it's not as like forward, and therefore you don't feel it, the grit and the grime of that guitar really as much. But it also, I don't know, there's something kind of polished about the end result. But yeah, it sounded, good guitars. There's an interesting narrative. I mean, it sounded like, I don't know, everything you say will destroy you. Almost like, you're better off pleading the fifth, or, the sort of, Miranda right of, keeping your lips shut because you don't want anything to kind of like further implicate or, indict you in whatever the situation is. So yeah, it sounds like someone is being, I don't know, persecuted might be too far of a leap, but it does sound like something working against someone, perhaps through the law or something like that. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm sure John could clear that up for me. Yeah, a song I feel probably a bit too brief, probably missing a part to add a little bit to it. And I don't know for sure if that would be enough to take this from a, to a, oh, wow, for me anyway. But it does feel like the song is, I don't know, lacking something in that regard. But regardless, the parts that exist and, do comprise this song are, fine. And they sound pretty damn good to me. So, interesting talking about, like, marking your territory and pissing on what sounded like an answer phone. I don't know what any of that is. I think I heard something about lying in a mound of ashes. These are all interesting, evocative lyrics, but I can't seem to kind of like staple them or cobble them together to make a cohesive narrative. But I'm sure with lyrics like that, there has to be information out there about what they mean. So I'm sure John can kind of like, fill in the gaps for me and inform me of what the story is behind this track. But yeah, this is a pretty good listen. And I'm interested to hear more about this track. I think this is the second time. I don't know if we've ever done the Auteurs on Into the Music, but I think this is the second time we've done them here. So yeah, interesting stuff. Let's get back to John and discuss it a bit more.
St. Martin in the Fields is back. So you've got to listen to Everything You Say Will Destroy You by the Auteurs. Please let us know what you think.
I will. This is quite a brief little number here. The song begins with, as you would probably imagine, given its brevity, a little pageantry as we are instantly thrust into the narrative as the singer delivers the opening lines over an almost tinny bit of sharp guitar chords that are punctuated by these little bass notes that kind of accent each chord in the progression. And the singer seems to be recounting a very specific event, though I am not sure what exactly it is. I guess you would have to be there. I believe the opening quatrain scans, well, they sent back all the bodies. You were looking really hopeless. Well, it didn't seem that callous till they stopped you in your flow. He continues, she's surrounded by her wardens, and they're looking really nervous about the man from Rogers. I didn't catch that word. Here to nullify your glow. So yeah, I haven't a clue what's going on here, other than it doesn't sound positive and perhaps involves someone in the custody of the law. And emerging from the other side of that last line is this growing resonant organ note that kind of stretches across the surface of the soundscape like the contents of a glass spilled on a countertop. It as it does, the singer presses on, everything you say will destroy you. That makes sense. Everything you say will come haunt you around each corner. Everything you say will destroy you. Now, perhaps this is an allusion to the idea that no matter what the subject of the song says, they will be picked apart and perhaps implicated in some deed. And no matter what they say, it will be used against them. I don't know, throwing shit at the wall here. It's at this point that I abandon the narrative to focus on the music, as from here the drums do a simple but nice little roll to signify change in the music, which kind of blossoms into this newish motif. I say newish because the chords sound familiar a bit, but it does sound fuller. And it's led by a methodically placed strut of that guitar chord progression that I just mentioned. This portion resolves on the band cutting out, save for the drummer, who implements a succinct, what sounds like this flam, and then ushers in another chorus.
Wham bam, thank you, man.
Yes, and thank you, Flam. Which sounds like it's one consonant away from being a delicious Spanish dessert. I know this will sound antithetical or maybe oxymoronic, but this guitar tone somehow possesses both a sense of smoothness and grittiness. And I think that that has to do with like the production of it. Like if you stripped away all the production, I think it would sound gritty. But the way it's kind of like buried a little bit, it kind of smooths it out somewhat. I don't know. It's an interesting sound to the guitar. At the 145 mark, the music cuts out briefly again, allowing the guitar's resonance to wash over the track. The music then returns as the chord progression again feels a little distant or hushed, but then slowly grows as this verse progresses. The singer mentions something about some kind of suitor who leaves his things around your home. He's marking out his territory. And then instantly I say marking your territory. We were just talking about dogs off camera. I'm thinking of what they do typically when they're marking their territory. As he sings something about how he pisses on what sounds like to me your answer phone. I don't know what that is, but I assume it's just your fucking telephone. But I'm not all that confident in my ability to catch these lyrics. Things don't get much clearer from here, save for something about lying on a mound of ashes. This gives way to one final chorus that abruptly cuts off, which seemed like a truncated ending to the song that felt like it had more left in the tank, even if that more was just another 20 or 30 seconds to kind of better or more smoothly resolve the whole shebang and bang here. But jarring ending aside, this was a perfectly fine song with some nice guitar tones and simple but effective drum work. Nothing for me to either write home about nor complain about. But I am, however, interested in the narrative, which did strike me as really interesting. And I don't know, it's weird because I was totally off with my interpretation of the last track that you gave me by Tropical Fuckstorm. But there is this same sort of like someone's in a bad situation, and I know I misinterpreted that, but I'm feeling a similar vibe here that I felt with that, which is that someone is in a precarious situation, perhaps legally, and they've got to get their way out of it or something like that. I don't know. It kind of changed a little bit when it switched over to this guy who's territorially pissing on your telephone or whatever. But that opening stanza and the contents therein reminded me of somebody who best stay tight-lipped for their own, legal safety or something like that. It was interesting. I want you to kind of connect the dots for me here, John. So tell me a bit more about this track by the Auteurs.
Okay, very interesting as always. This is a commentary, a social commentary about a particular bunch of people.
Okay.
And this is a hate song rather than a love song.
Well, I picked up,
Really?
at least I picked up on that. It didn't sound like
Yeah.
anybody was smitten in the words that I caught.
As I said before, we have covered Auteurs in a previous episode. New French Girlfriend, which has gone about them. So I'll put a link in below. You can go check them out. I'll just concentrate on this song and this album. So this track comes from the band's third album, After Murder Park, released in March 1996. Just by the way, I mean, it's all about timing, isn't it? So we do songs, and one of the songs in there is called Unsolved Child Murder. There's another few songs on there, and this was released just days after the Dunblane attack, where someone attacked kids in school and killed loads of people, which is a big thing in this country and a very rare thing. So, you know, it resonates.
I was gonna say it's something that happens at least seasonally over here. So,
Yeah,
not to make it any less tragic or whatever, but we face it a lot more often.
yeah. So there's some really sort of timing's really, really bad with this. But anyway, so the album is described as a baroque pop, alternative rock, and indie pop, and it is quite possibly the most anti-Britpop album of its time. There's a really nice write-up by The Quietus, which gives a bit of sort of background stuff, so I shall delve into it. So talking about the album, it receives mostly decent and lengthy reviews, and it goes on to sell 58,000 copies. This is a figure beyond Luke Haynes, he's the lead singer and writer, wildest dreams when he first started the band, but in the feverish atmosphere of competition that now exists in the world of British guitar pop, it is deemed a commercial failure and indicative of a slow but steady decline in their fortunes. Who knew that at the height of the gormlessly positive Britpop episode, punters weren't inclined to buy a collection of songs about child murder, suicide, domestic abuse, and alcoholism. In his mostly reliable and very funny memoir, Bad Vibes, Haynes himself identifies the rot. So this gives you all like perspective of what was going on in Britain at the time, Britpop, and also his view of it. And I realised as I was doing the research that I haven't got a copy of his book, so I've ordered it, but it hasn't come yet. But I should let you know how interesting it is. But yeah, Haynes identifies the rot setting in the release of Blur's Parklife in April '94. Its enthusiastic embrace by both the mainstream and the indie masses marked the point at which Britpop moved out of the pages of the musical press and into the real world marketplace. After years of being a minority concern, the British indie scene had finally birthed a genuine unit-shifting phenomenon. Guitar bands were no longer just judged on the music they made and the poses they pulled, but on how many records they sold. And Haynes found himself being sucked into the machinery of that all entails. Interestingly enough, when they started off their first album, they were actually nominated for the Mercury Music Prize, and they missed out to Suede, who they then also toured with. And at the start of their career, it was all, you know, happy, and by this point, it wasn't. So events came to a head in September '94 during a European tour promoting their second album, Now I'm a Cowboy. Sick of the rigmarole of playing the same songs night after night with a band he professed to hate. That's another story. And plagued by the type of ghostly hallucinations that suggest a mind unraveling, Haynes drunkenly jumped off a high wall in the Spanish seaside town of San Sebastian and broke both his ankles.
Wow.
He rationalized this action as a deliberate self-hobbling in an effort to escape the promotional treadmill, claiming, "I jumped off a 15-foot wall to finish the tour and get the insurance." He later admitted it was just pissed up behaviour and a miscalculation about the surface he was jumping onto, which turned out to be concrete, writing, "I merely drank too much wine and fell over." So, reduced to bumping around in the basement of his Camden flat in a wheelchair, because it was a year before he could even walk again. You imagine this sort of bitter Dickensian figure. As he recovered, Haynes made use of his hard-earned free time by writing the Auteurs' next album. Unsurprisingly, given his general disillusionment with the music industry and the bunker-like isolation of his circumstances, the subject matter of the songs began to emerge that was dark, to say the least. The projected title of the new album was going to be called Uber Hate. It was also a reaction to what happened right outside his pavement level window, having had the misfortune to move into Camden just as it became the epicenter of puffed up Britpop want-to-be-done. As Haynes noted in his book Bad Vibes, while the full idiocracy of the era is yet to be felt, the signs of what was to come were everywhere with the ascendance of Oasis. The fact that for many journalists and fans, the Auteurs were now viewed as being merely a precursor to Britpop was an especially bitter pill for Haynes to swallow, and it clearly left a very bad taste in his mouth. He already earmarked the man who was going to help him with this new venture. And to Haynes' surprise, his record label, Hot, agreed to hire him, and that was Steve Albini. In fact, the Auteurs already demoed a couple of tracks with him earlier in '94, and as well as approving of his brisk working methods, Haynes had sensed a kindred contrarian spirit. So the band entered Abbey Road Studios at the end of March '95, and 2 weeks later, they'd finished a new album. They'd been now titled After Motor Park, and they'd been recorded and mixed and was ready to go. And then nothing. In a display of typical record label anti-logic, Hut decided to hold back its release until the following year, which left Haynes to seethe through the summer of the great Blur versus Oasis debacle. In quotes, his stinking fucking corpse of an album left on the shelf when it could have been the righteous corrective to the contrived spectacle that Britwell and rapidly become. You can see the bitterness and the
Yeah. And I'm also, I know this probably doesn't align, but I'm still imagining him with two like gimped out ankles and all the anger, in a basement flat, stewing over this. It's painting quite a picture of a curmudgeon.
Yes. So Haynes tried to keep his spirits up by beginning to formulate his next project, a glam funk concept album about West German terrorist group, the Baader Meinhof Gang. Then finally, and then a year after we recorded After Motor Park was led blinking and screaming into the light of day. So personnel: Luke Haynes, vocals, guitar, harmonium. This is for the whole album. James Bradbury, cellos, Hammond organ and Korg. Alice Redmond, bass, and Barney C. Rockford, drums. And they also had Andy Bush, French horn, Marcus Broom, violin, Eleanor Gilchrist, violin, Teresa Whipple, viola, Abigail Trundle, cello, and Ben Davis, cello. So, Everything You Say Will Destroy You is a masterclass in musical misanthropy and a razor-sharp rejection of the mid-90s Britpop zeitgeist. The song stands as one of the finest examples of Haynes' distinct brand of cynical high art pop. Steve Albini's signature dry, visceral production grounds the track, or engineering as he would call it. The drums are punishingly crisp and the guitars are captured with a jagged, metallic bite that completely strips away the glossy optimism common in 1996 British guitar pop. I mean, if you compare it to like said bands, the difference is stark. Despite the abrasive textures, the song remains a brilliantly pop sensibility. James Bradbury's subtle cello and organ arrangements weave through the track, adding an eerie, elegant dimension to the onslaught of the noise. Now, you'd hear the organ, and I mean, you have to listen really closely to hear the cello, which actually tramlines with the organ notes, and it gives this like bass to it, which you wouldn't get normally. Really clever.
Yeah, you'd mentioned the cello a couple times, and I was thinking, God damn, I don't remember hearing it in this. So I'll have to revisit this. It's a pretty small, brief track, so I'll go back and try to see if I can pinpoint that, especially when that organ starts yawning across the soundscape.
The track is a bleak exercise in self-sabotage and paranoia. While contemporaries were singing about living forever, Haynes delivers a dark, unfulfilling prophecy about the inherent dangers of communication and vulnerability. Haynes sings with his trademark hissed, deadpan delivery, Slytherin, I think it's called. Juxtaposition of a genuinely memorable, hummable tune with lyrics steeped in absolute nihilism is what makes the song uniquely compelling. Analog Trash said, "Everything You Say With the Story is a captivating, claustrophobic slice of post-punk bleakness. It's essential listening for anyone who prefers their pop music served with a heavy dose of venom, structure, and historical friction." So you get the sort of spite that's involved here, because he's basically talking about all these people that you can name, and hopefully, and there's little verses in each one of them, and basically everything you say will destroy you, which comes to pass in some people's cases.
Yeah,
I'm thinking of a certain quiff-haired lead singer, but anyway. Well, they sent back all the bodies who were looking really hopeless. Well, it didn't seem that callous till they stopped you in your flow. She's surrounded by her wardens and they're looking really nervous. All about the man from Reuters, here to nullify your glow. Everything you say will destroy you anyway. Everything you say will come to haunt you round each corner. Everything you say will destroy you. Well, you may think that you're Buddha, lying on a mound of ashes. You're mentioned in the postscript of dispatches anyway. And the major's really nervous when he's walking around the airport. You know your master's card is marked. Your upstart charge is cool and smart. Everything you say will destroy you anyway. Everything you say will come to haunt you round each corner. Everything you say will destroy you. Well, your unwanted suitor leaves his things around your home. He's marking out his territory. He's pissing on your answer phone. Well, you may think that your Buddha lying on a mound of ashes, you would mention in the postscript of dispatches anyway. Everything you say will destroy you anyway. Everything you say will haunt you. I just call everything that will destroy you. Yeah, this is probably my favorite track of this album. I think this album is fantastic. Probably my favorite Auteurs album. It took a while to bed in, but it does. It's really idiosyncratic. There's a track on there called Unsolved Child Murder, which is basically led by a French horn and a tuba and a cello, and it does sound quite a bit like it's in the same family as Penny Lane. But the lyrics are just horrific.
What an interesting dynamic that is.
But they're not shock lyrics. It's just deeply quite moving as well, but just really in a horrific in the real sense that it is horrifying rather than it's just, edifying to see this sort of schlock horror stuff going on.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Quietus verdict, they said, after Murder Park entered the UK charts at number 33, it then quickly disappeared from view. It's pointless to argue the merits or otherwise of a work of art based on how many copies it sold, but as previously noted, the auteurs were no longer a saleable commodity. Instead, the great British public were preparing to spend its money on seeing Oasis at Networth. A staggering 2.5 million people applied for tickets, 4% of the population. The subtitle of Haynes' autobiography, Bad Vibes, is Britpop and My Part in Its Downfall, but it's just a knowing nod to Spike Milligan's book, Adolf Hitler and My Part in His Downfall, about his war memoir. By this stage of the conflict, Haynes' role as a naysaying irritant was much the same as that of a barnacle on a whale. And like the rest of us, he could only watch in helpless disbelief as the idiot joy steamroller of Britpop crushed all before it. Yet looking back, After Murder Park feels like the definitive anti-Britpop album, not only for the stark, remorseless crunch of Albini's recording, but for the way that Haynes skewers the dark underside of what Britpop was supposedly celebrating. Stoked by a happily complicit music press, Britpop's very name tapped into isolationist resentment of being swamped by a foreign culture, in this instance, grunge. But it was a symptom of a wider malaise that continued to afflict British society. Along with Oasis, the summer of 1996 was soundtracked by Baddiel and Skinner's Three Lions, 1.6 million copies sold in the UK, the unofficial anthem of England's Euro 96 campaign, which culminated in the Daily Mirror's notorious cover featuring Paul Gascoigne and Stuart Pearce, their English footballers, in tin hats with the headline Achtung Surrender for you Fritz, the Euro 96 championship is over. All too easily, Britpop became part of this jingoistic, flag-waving groupthink. National pride quickly mutated into something uglier and more insidious. Ghosts of the past dragged up once again. Larry British expectations abound, and we now know where that was leading. After Murder Park might be hard-edged and barbed-wired taunt, the sound of a man both at war with the world and himself. But it's also one of those albums that's perfectly formed. You wouldn't want to lose a song from it. And listen to it today. It does sound full of dark premonitions in a world where the pre-science preacher has taken hold of the controls. It's a classic for our age, or as Haynes would describe it, a monster piece. Following the disappointment of this, Haynes broke the band up, and then he went on to a number of projects. So the aforementioned Bader Meinhof was a solo project named after the German far-left terrorist organization. It's not terrible. It's all right to listen to, but it's not his best work. He then did Black Box Recorder, another sort of name with some sunny dispositions to it.
He seems to have this theme of either raising eyebrows or ruffling feathers, and anywhere in between when it comes to his naming conventions.
He is a misanthrope. There's no two ways about it. So basically, Black Box Recorder was formed with John Moore as an ex-member of Jesus and Mary Chain and vocalist Sarah Nixie. And it also spawned Luke Haynes' most commercially successful single throughout his career, a song called "Facts of Life," and they appeared on Top of the Pops singing it, and you see Mr. Haynes there playing guitar. It's quite funny. He then reformed the Auteurs for their fourth and final album, "How I Learned to Love the Boot Boys," in 1999. Since then, he has released 16 solo studio albums, the latest being "Izzy Wizzy, Let's Get Busy" in 2026, this year. He's also released some novels. He's also done some artwork as well. He is a kind of Renaissance man of a sort. So yeah, really fascinating stuff, and it really paints a picture from a different perspective of what was going on in '96 in this country,
Yeah.
as opposed to this cool Britannia vibe that was predominant within the media. There's at least one person who wasn't loving things and living life.
No, no, not at all. It seemed like everything was working against him, and I'm sure he felt like that too. It's kind of comedic that like they lose out on that award to Suede, you know, and then he thinks it can't get any worse, and then he gets usurped by Oasis later, and it's just like he can't fucking win for trying. And it's by all these artists who represent a genre that he good and loathes at this juncture. So that yeah, you kind of feel for the guy.
But Sliding Doors, it could have been him instead of
Yeah.
Suede, you know, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
But I think it's the vacuousness of it all, and basically he's saying that, everything you say will destroy you, is because what you're made of intrinsically is just stuff and nonsense. It's hot air. There's no substance to you. So if the real you comes out, you're finished.
Yeah.
As opposed to your media image. And I think a lot of this is wish fulfillment. He's singing there with his fingers crossed, going, "Oh, everything you say will destroy you." Hopefully,
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed to happen, but it's so funny. I just
Sort
thought
of like the musical version of a voodoo doll, where he's just like wishing this on whomever it's pointed at. Yeah.
there's one other thing. So yeah, the album. I will briefly. Yeah, so the album's absolutely fantastic, and I was listening just the other day just to reassert myself, and the title track's great, but the opener is a song called "Light Aircraft on Fire," and it. And there's some lovely thing on YouTube. You can find it if you Google it, where there's one of these trendy British youth shows. I think it was called like The Hanger or something. I can't remember what it's called. And had one of these blonde women presenting it that was famous for shagging footballers and whatever. And they said, "Oh, here's the Auteurs with Light Aircraft on Fire." And then they're playing it on stage, and it has got some bite to it. And people are sort of dancing around, clearly oblivious to what he's saying. And it's just the imagery is just so delightful. It's so weird. But yeah,
the resentment in his eyes as he looks out on the crowd as they're just like bopping along. Sure.
Yeah, I mean, he would have set them all on fire himself if he could have done.
Exactly.
But yeah, there's some great tracks on there. Child Brides, Land Lovers is a fantastic song, and New Brat in Town as well. And then there's the amazingly charming, and it is a charming song, and Soul Child Murder is just, unfortunate. And there's a song called Buddha, which is hilarious as well. So yeah, I strongly recommend it. But the more I researched into this as well, the funnier I found it, because I knew bits about him, but this just took the biscuit, so I had to include it just for the story alone. But yeah, great. Well, I should wrap things up. Thanks for listening to this, Andy, and getting out the other side unscathed. And folks out there, please tell us what you think. If you do like this, please hit the like button and drop your comments, all warm-hearted and congratulatory about Luke Haynes and his career, I'm sure. And we'd love to hear your take on old sourpuss himself. So yeah, have at it. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. I doubt anything else will change your mind, but if you listen to this. But yeah, we really appreciate everybody to support the channel. So dive on in, rubber ring included. That being said, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see all of you on the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.